Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar on time. I'm just going to wait 1 minute for others to join, because we do have a good amount more who should join imminently. Clearly the clock is maybe slightly different to ours. All right. A few more joining now. Numbers are going up quickly. Okay. I'm going to get going. And for those who missed the start or couldn't manage to join, this will be recorded anyway. So welcome. My name's Andy Johnson. I'm your host for the session. I'm joined by Andy Snow, our privacy specialist. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you to everyone for joining us on this Building Your Career as a DPO or Privacy Lead webinar. Throughout, we're going to ask for some input from you, please. So do try participate. I'm the head of training. I love participation on events, training, and webinars. So I'm going to ask you to do so, please. So some will come shortly, so get ready. But we'll use that info to shape some of the discussions for what we're presenting to you. And hopefully we can then be of more value to you. You can add questions throughout. So if you look on your kind of dashboard, there'll be a section for chat and a section for questions. So hope you get everything you need from the session. And to start us off, I would like you all to just find that chat button and maybe give me one word or sentence on what you would like to get out of this session. Okay, I'm going to move on while you're doing that, but please try find that. At least one or two of you do it for me, so I know you're there. Stick in the chat what you would like to get from the session, and hopefully we can do a good job for you, like I said. So what are we going to cover? Well, some intros. We're going to cover the scope of GDPR and data, the DPO role itself, pathways, professional pathways you can embark on, how to maintain your professional development and ways of skilling yourself to benefit your career and the organization you work for, a couple of bits of other things as well, and then we'll close. It's going to be fairly quick, so pay attention. And yeah, options, thank you. Got a few responses for you in the chat questions now. So I'm Andy Johnson, like I said. I have a background in managing operations as an ops director and education programs, and have overseen training programs and upskilled around about 50,000 plus, so quite a lot. I love working on the design of learning and innovating how we teach. I have a particular passion on that. With me is Andy Snow. Like I said, welcome, Andy. Andy is an extremely experienced GDPR professional. Lots of experience working in public and regulated sector, and has directly trained and upskilled around 2,500 individuals on their careers. So welcome, Andy. Now, interaction-wise, like I said, there's a few polls we want to do through this. So how much privacy experience do you have? So I'm just going to do a little poll. It should ask you now to answer that. So if you could do that for me, that'll help us understand what your starting point is. So let's have a look here. We've got a good amount of you voted, still 30% to go. So if you haven't voted, please do so I can move on. Good. Nearly there. One or two more. All right, that's good feedback. It may change if one or two of you poll again in a minute. I'm just going to grab that information, if you bear with me, and put that. I was going to. Yep, here we go. In a place where I can share it with you shortly. I have another poll for you to do, so I'll open that up in a second. And if we look here, have you had certified training before? So give us an idea of what kind of training you might have had before. Good, much quicker in getting the poll done. Thank you. That was very quick. Well done. So we've got a good split there. I will just summarize that very quickly for your and Andy's benefit. Hopefully with dropping the information into a very rough and ready slide. If I close this poll, here we go. So experience-wise, we've got a range there, which is very good. Some of you with 10 plus years, well done. And in terms of various levels, we've got 30% of you certified at DPO level, 14 at practitioner level, and 8% at foundation. That's really good context for us. Thank you. All right, well, let's kick on. Let's have a look at the landscape we work in across the UK. So Andy, what are we working with?
Depending on your organisation, you could be working purely in the UK, you could be purely working in the EU, or you could be working in both. And as such, we've got to understand the EU GDPR for those working in that environment. Certainly here in the UK, we've got the UK Data Protection Act and the updated GDPR because of Brexit. However, we've also got to look at local legislation. As an example, here in the UK, we had the Data Protection Bill came in with the GDPR, and each member state will have its own implementation legislation that sits next to the GDPR. However, in the UK, we also have going through Parliament at the moment something called the Digital Protection and Digital Information Bill, and we'll have a flash update at the end of this webinar for you as to where that now sits. But just also understanding that we've got to understand where our data is. Who are our data subjects? Where are our data subjects? Where are we? Where is the data being processed, stored, archived, so that we can bring in those bits of legislation? Hopefully, Andy, that should sort of fix that one.
That's good, Andy. So broadly speaking, that's the top level. So let's look at the responsibilities then, given that context for the DPO or privacy lead. So can you talk us through what being a DPO or privacy lead might encompass, about the role?
So most certainly, again, it is a wide-ranging arena that we've got to play with. So certainly when we're looking at this, you've got the individuals, that individual being us, the privacy experts. And our job there is to certainly monitor compliance with the GDPR and that other data protection legislation. And we can do that by doing our audits, our privacy impact assessments to identify those risks. And certainly as we start to progress through our career, we will be providing advice, guidance, shaping those conversations at sort of board level to ensure that we are providing that up-to-date relevant information, prompting that change, whether it be through managing the record of processing register, the DPIAs, going into providing staff training in data protection, privacy, and of course monitoring those breaches. But of course we are that focal point, and if that's what we're focusing on today and how to progress our career in providing that.
It's a lot to understand, isn't there, Andy, and a lot to be done. Got a few
There
DPOs.
is.
Yeah, we've got a few DPOs, certified DPOs on the call, so you'll be all too familiar with this kind of stuff. Andy, a common question, is the role advisory or accountable? You know, what are the differences, you know, when you're a DPO?
Ultimately, the GDPR says that the controller processor is accountable. The DPO, I guess, or the appointed person is there to provide the advice, the guidance, that additional information. Whilst the DPO is a protected position within the organization, not so much for the appointed person, we are not ultimately accountable. That is the board, the CEO, the managing director.
Yeah, so influencing them and interacting with them is really important as a skill for a DPO. Big challenge. What does it mean in terms of those difficulties? What difficulties might we encounter in the role of a DPO or an appointed person?
I suppose one of the biggest problems we have is getting buy-in. A lot of organizations see this as a barrier to progressing and generating revenue. So getting that buy-in from board level can be difficult, but it is also that opportunity to generate revenue if we are doing this correctly. So it is very worthwhile making sure that we shape those conversations at the board, the senior management level, throughout all of the departments.
Yeah, very challenging to do, and we'll talk about it a bit more through these slides. But you know, beyond the regulatory understanding and knowledge, there are other skills which a DPO needs within the role. Okay, so expanding on the role of DPO, how does the DPO affect the organization's stance or strategic approach? Andy, talk us through that, please.
Yeah, so I guess starting from the sort of operational level, it is providing that everyday guidance, up-to-date information around information security, touching through cyber security, through to understanding the operational business requirements to not just generate that revenue, but to make sure that we are doing so in a compliant fashion. Now, of course, when it comes to the strategic, it is about monitoring against the relevant legislation, but also understanding the binding decisions from the European Data Protection Board, the latest guidance from the ICO. And certainly here in the UK, one of the biggest factors is going to be this digital information, data protection and digital information bill, if it was to go through.
Yeah, and as we know, it's gone through its first stage, so we can update a bit more on that in a little bit. That's good. I just want to pause, Andy, just to take a look at some of the feedback. Yes, this will be shared. So the PowerPoint and slides will be shared with you. Got a question there for Sabrin, thank you. Donald, thank you for your input. Begin your role as a DPO in Jamaica. Best of luck with that. So this is important for that reason. What are some of the essential tools and resources, technical and human, that DPO should have at their disposal? Maybe a bit more of a detailed question we can answer here, but we will try. And we have a question, whether we answer it or not now or a bit later, Andy. How can a data protection officer initiate necessary actions throughout an organization when they lack insight into other functional areas? That's a really good question, Rita. Andy, I'll let you decide when you want to answer those while we flow through here.
Let's sort of leave them to the end, and we can deal with them all in a one to make sure we answer all of those.
No worries. I didn't know whether you could answer them on certain slides or not, so that's fine. Okay, so let's take a quick look at which organizations require a DPO and which don't. So Andy, help us understand this. It's not always easy, is it?
It isn't. When looking at the GDPR, it says quite clearly in Article 37 that we need to have a DPO in 3 situations, i.e. when the organisation is a public body, a public authority, or it's large-scale processing of special categories of data. However, we've also got different interpretations across the EU. For example, in Germany, if you have 10 employees or more, you must have a DPO.
Wow.
So it's, whilst there is one interpretation, i.e. the GDPR, whether it be the EU or the UK, different member states have taken different views on it. And certainly the full-time DPO, if you are meeting that requirement, of course, there can be no conflict of interest in additional tasks or duties. However, if you don't need a DPO, you still need somebody in the organization that's at the front of this. Somebody has still got to be dealing with this. It just doesn't suddenly disappear. So we have an appointed person, and on the slide there, you can see some of the different names, titles that people may have. And they can have a conflict of interest. Of course, it's not ideal, but there will be instances where you will have the HR manager or the IT manager doubling up as the appointed person within that organization. However, when it comes to the training of those, there is nothing to say that an appointed person should only do the practitioner and not move on to the DPO. Of course, that's providing that professionalism to our progression in our careers.
Yeah, it's an interesting one where there's a conflict of interest, but it's a choice, right? And it's a risk-based choice. Is that right?
It is. Whilst there has been regulatory action against organisations that have put a DPO in a position where there is a conflict of interest. Usually it's a reprimand that you would get from that. However, some organisations have certainly received a minimal amount of fines. But there will always be that sort of situation where there is going to be a conflict of interest.
Yeah. And in terms of risk, the risks are fines or damage to reputation, right?
There is certainly there is the operational, there is the reputational risk, the regulatory action, the fines, the compensation. But of course, when we talk about reputational risk, how many of the 180 odd fines have people heard about? It's only those larger fines, the £1 million ones, TikTok £12.7 million, BA £20 million. They're the ones that get to the headline. So reputational, we talk about it, but it's something that you have to go out and find.
Sure. But if it is bound and the customer information is important, it can seriously affect your business.
Most certainly. Why would I want to use your organization if you are constantly breaching the GDPR, causing data breaches? And certainly I would strongly suggest, as part of the due diligence of using a new organization, you certainly use tools like the ICO's Action We've Taken page or the European Data Protection Board's National News, which will give you all of those fines, reprimands, and the action taken.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Andy. I'm going to segue now into some other bits and pieces in terms of how you can develop as a privacy professional or a data protection officer. Before I do, just another quick poll. Just going to see if you're a DPO or a privacy lead at the moment. So we've done one or two polls before this, but if you could all just hit the button that applies. Goodness, a good amount of DPOs on the call. Either that or you were just quicker off the mark, and maybe that's a skill that DPOs have, very quick to respond. So let me just grab this poll. I think we're nearly finished now. I can't find. Here we go. So I will share the poll responses with you all. 30-odd% are a current DPO. Here we go. Excuse my snip and drop, but it's the best way I can share with you. So need to know more about the role. Hoping to become one, 20%. I'm sure you will. This is a good webinar to join if you are on that journey. No, but you have some responsibilities. Again, training is important. Yes, I'm a privacy lead and 30% are a DPO. So that's good to know. All right. Let's have a look then at reasons to develop. Some of these are pretty obvious. It's a requirement to comply to GDPR, fines, reputation. So if it's a role you're operating in, you obviously want to be good at doing that. So being great in your role requires experience, training, sharing best practice. It'll open up career opportunities. So, you could grow through size and scale of organization and expertise. It's an achievement in its own right as you progress. So being a professional DPO, I've just realized I'm still on the poll. So here's the slide you should be seeing. I apologize, everyone. So it's a requirement, being great in your role, open up career opportunities, and it's just simply an achievement. So what skills does a DPO need, Andy? Talk us through that.
What we've done here is just pick on a few of the more relevant ones, I guess. There are an endless list of those professional skills that we should certainly have. But certainly being able to shape decisions, shaping the conversation, whether it be at board level or within the different departments, changing the conversation, trying to get the different departments to come up with those changes themselves. If we can shape the conversation so that they come up with the idea, then we've got a far better chance of getting them to buy into this. So definitely communication, guiding and influencing at senior level is going to be a key part of this. When we get down to information security, risk management, experience and knowledge, well, whilst the organization is ultimately accountable for its risk, we are going to be using tools such as the data protection impact assessment, our risk register, our record of processing activities, for us to be able to understand those risks. So, of course, we've got to keep up to date with the ICO and their latest guidance, the European supervisory authorities, but even going far as places like ENISA, the EU Cybersecurity Centre, you've got the National Cybersecurity Centre here in the UK, just to make sure that we're keeping up to date with the trends, the landscape. With the knowledge of the regulations, it is not just the legal, the regulations, it's the sectorial guidance, it's your contractual obligations. So as much going through all of this, keeping yourself as up to date as possible, making sure that you go through those contracts between the controller, the processor, joint controllers. It's certainly one of the biggest problems we find. DPO goes and knocks on the contract department door. Can I see the contract, please? No, it's commercial in confidence. Yeah, but I only want the data sharing part. That's the bit that we need. That's the bit that I need to understand. Leadership, management. So making sure that we do have that ability to shape the conversations, to get that buy-in from the senior management, the directors, to make sure that they're walking the walk. and putting in place the proportionate governance measures supporting what it is that we're trying to do in building this privacy framework. And of course, we've got the attention to detail problem solving. You've got to keep yourself up to date with the regulations, the guidance, etc., so that you can provide the most relevant information, updated information. But of course, we will be problem solving. You go to a department, a part of the organization, you influence that change, and then they're going to come up with, well, we've got these problems. How do we get around this? You're trying to put barriers in my way. Well, no, what we need to do is this, so that we get them on board.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of challenges in such a role, whether you're an appointed DPO or a lead person. And thank you, Drew. Your privacy lead without the title brings its own challenges. You know, soft skills are important across, you know, the whole cyber kind of sector, in particular with data protection, or just if you're a compliance generalist. Influencing the leaders to do what you think they need to do or advise them to do, being persuasive, coherent, and then dealing with challenges that come with that. You know, in terms of problem solving, if problems come up, which they do inevitably with data protection. Thank you. So what we're going to look at next is a typical certified pathway. So we had a few of you say you're at the beginning of your journey. Some of you are further down the line. You know, you're acting or in place DPO now. So this is a certified journey that IT governance deliver. Industry leading experts with GDPR. We were the first to bring GDPR training to the market, certified GDPR training, and that was led by Alan Calder, industry leading GDPR expert. So the typical journey for those of you at the beginning would be to get a foundation level training under your belt, and then once you've got that, move into the practitioner training, which is exactly what it said. It talks about how to implement and practice the teachings. When you're doing this learning, it is important to remember you need the other skills to develop. So you need experience to develop. You need some of those soft skills as you go through. Just understanding the regulation isn't enough to be effective in the job role. Now, once you've achieved your practitioner, you can then kick on and do the data protection officer training. This kind of area is professionalizing, just as you would have for medical experts, your GPs, your accountants, your lawyers. This is a professional role. So these certifications are around maintaining your professional development. So to attain a DPO officer, you have to pass the exam. And then once you've passed the exam, you can then apply for official DPO status, which requires 3 years of privacy experience and 50 CPD points. You can then kick on from there and become a DPO expert, or try to, which is a higher level qualification. Again, you need to pass the exam, which is very challenging, and have a minimum of 4 years of experience and 200 CPD points. So obviously, if you've got no experience yet, you kind of want to wait a little bit for those things. And for those of you who have got 10 years plus experience, there's a good few of you on the call, and in a DPO role, you can kick on to the master. You have to do them in order, but the master requires 6 years experience and 300 CPD points, and a very, very challenging exam. Talking degree level stuff. So that's the certified pathway. And you can see there how you can flow through it from provisional to officer to expert to master. Just to reiterate, combining that with experience, decent CPD, maintaining your CPD by keeping abreast of articles, webinars like this, gaining other certification is important to grow and be more effective in your role. So what can complement the kind of standard DPO or privacy pathway? Well, some of these are fairly obvious maybe to some of you, but it's important that you understand information security. So 27001, risk management, and business continuity are all essential ingredients to support your knowledge on how to maintain compliance and be more effective in your role. If any of those more senior DPOs have a view, drop in a chat on whether you think these are important or which you think is most important. It'd be good to kind of validate that. You also have the PIMS standard, which is the Privacy Information Management Standard Systems standard, and that's more based on obviously privacy. And then general cybersecurity. There are a number of trainings available. Having the basics is obvious, but you could kick on to things like CISM, CISP, if you haven't done so already. Again, very, very valuable qualifications. Those latter two are very are globally recognized qualifications and would certainly help you. So it's not just about the pathway. So just to kind of give you an idea of what some of you could do, because it's a different journey for all of you. You could follow the typical, if you see the snake here, and go around, but at each intersection where you see CPD here, for example, if you got to practitioner level, you can, you don't have to then do the DPO role. So if you're earlier in your career, for example, the DPO training might be something that's further away. What you could do is improve your knowledge on 27001 or risk management or business continuity. These are all important ingredients in building your knowledge and making you more effective in your role, but also more employable to other people, other organizations. So, experience-based approach to your learning. So I've kind of given you the kind of pathway. Now, some of you are very early in your career. Some of you are just setting off. So what we have here are just a little bit of guidance on where to start and how to go about it, because learning in the right way is really important. So if you have no experience at all, what we would recommend is something like our GDPR Foundation Super Plus product. Now, the reason it's a Super Plus product is it combines instructor-led training, a one-day condensed training with digital training, which is available for you to you for 12 months. So your learning process can be extended. Trying to come in without any knowledge and learn all of the foundation of GDPR is very tough, isn't it, Andy, to teach in a single day? Yeah,
it is very much.
So it'll blow your mind a little bit. So if you want to go for it, you can. You can go maybe straight into the kind of 1 year plus stage where you have the one-day foundation course, and you get everything you need on that course to give you the overview, but not deep dive. The deep dive comes from practitioner training, and that's a 4-day course where you can then learn how to apply the GDPR, in particular in the EU, UK, but for, I think it was, is it Donald in Jamaica? I might have got that wrong. But you know, still, this very closely applies. They follow the EU GDPR very closely, so the learning would be relevant. Now, if you've got 5 years experience, you can skip the practitioner course. You can skip it if you don't have that experience, but I wouldn't recommend it. And you can jump to the DPO 4-day course. You can do it much quicker. So for those of you on here, 31 said you're a DPO now, 31%. If you haven't got these certifications, you could just do that fast track. And obviously there's less time investment, less time to learn as a result, but also less cost on that journey. And then once DPO status has been achieved, you can then kick on for DPO expert or DPO master. And they're obviously going to be really challenging. So do take your time through the journey, embed your learning. Otherwise, you won't retain enough and apply enough in your job role. Anything you want to add there, Andy, or was that covered all right?
No, that was covered great. Thank you.
Lovely. So just to summarize, expand your knowledge of regulations and adjacent frameworks and standards, build your competency, maintain your professional status. Those will all hold you in good stead. So we've covered these kind of, but that's just a kind of reiteration. Now, IT governance, deliver all these courses, obviously, either in public formats. You can join a public course, you can take it self-paced, which is great if you want to learn, like I said, over up to 12 months. Take your time. You have to drive yourself though, so make sure it works for you. And we also do in-house training for if you have teams you want to upskill. So this Andy is something else. So updating yourself on useful areas. So you've got your professional certs, but there are maintaining other areas, aren't there? Your information. Talk us through these, Andy.
So just a couple of the links that I sort of use on a day-to-day basis, just to keep myself up to date with changes. I've got the European Data Protection Board news. That just gives us an understanding of what is happening across the EU from the EU Supervisory Authority perspective. The next one on there is I use something called the DLA Piper. DLA Piper is an international law firm, and they have put together a massive book, 1,100 odd pages of data protection legislation across the world. And it just gives you those brief insights as to where to look, what it is going on in those particular countries. So certainly if you've got processors, controllers in these other countries, it's a starting point as to understanding what those additional laws are. Certainly, everybody should be aware of Max Schrems. He certainly shaped the way that the GDPR has been interpreted over the last few years, taken Facebook or Meta to the Courts of Justice of the European Union, stopping those international transfers between the EU and the US. But he has his own website, Noid, My Privacy is None of Your Business, and he does have a wealth of information on there, not just what's happening in the EU, but what he is taking on board and what his law firm is doing, giving us that up-to-date information. I've also put on there the ICO's community forum for DPOs. It's something that the ICO launched a couple of months ago. It's slowly starting to take shape. It's there, use it to ask questions and get answers from other DPOs in this field. But there is a consolidated list of these in the handout.
Yeah. It's a good point to finish on. Now, these will be included in the handout, so yeah, just click through to them, have a look. We would recommend it. So just to summarize, on your journey to professionalizing yourself and learning around privacy, becoming a professional DPO, qualifications are important. Showed you the pathways. Experience is important. Embedding your learning, applying your learning, gaining some experience, getting the miles in the legs, so to speak, whilst you're running a marathon, and maintaining your knowledge. So Andy's just talked a bit about that. Tick those boxes and you should fly through your career. That there are plenty of jobs available. There is a huge skills gap in the area. There's a huge demand for people with these skills. And especially if you add some of the other qualifications, you become very, very employable. And salary-wise, it obviously has clear benefits there. So got another poll for you to do, please. See how many of you are still with us. Which qualification do you think might be a logical next step? Good, thank you. You'll get very, very quick on this. So we're flying through. We're up to 60% of you. 70. Just a few more, please. Nearly there. All right. Okay, that's enough votes to make that worthwhile. I will try my best to share it with you and come off the poll, which I didn't do last time. I will close the poll now, and you should now see all 4 results. Let's see what this says. So 30% are considering the foundation, 10 practitioner, 30% the DPO professional. Well done. 15% for the DPO expert. You will be, by the way, you did take it, the first to do so. And 13% other frameworks and standards, which is very sensible for you to do. So well done. That's good. So what have we got next? Flash update, Andy, on the UK data protection and digital information. That's a mouthful, isn't it? I mean, you try to say that fast a couple of times. It's hard. So what's the update, Andy?
The update, I guess, is that for those that have been following, it's now got through the House of Commons, and it's now sat with the House of Lords. It's had its first reading. It's going through its second reading now in the House of Lords. And if you have been following the progression through the parliamentary website, you would have seen that this Data Protection Digital Information Bill, which is just a list of deletes and inserts into the relevant regulations, legislation, it's now at 300 pages long. And now there are companies out there offering courses on this already. My strong suggestion is that you don't do it. We don't know what the next round of changes are going to be. We don't even know if this is going to become law yet. So I would suggest to people that you don't worry about trying to get information on this. Let's worry about it when it comes, because of course it will come with something like a 2-year implementation period. It's not going to be something that stops and all of a sudden it's something new. So it's got to get through the House of Lords. That could take a number of months. It could take until the end of next year. We really don't know. And we don't know what changes are going to be made. And then once it's got through that stage, it's then got to go through royal assent. So there's still a long way to go yet.
So Andy, I just need to move on because of time, but just to kind of summarize on there, the courses that are available now and the training available now applies to GDPR, UK GDPR or EU GDPR as is. If you were to train with IT governance, you would get the updates free of charge. We'll run webinars just like this, where you can get the concise update, collateral resources to help you kind of understand the changes. So you shouldn't worry about it too much short term. Before I go to questions, and because I'm running out of time, just want to make you all aware of promotions available for you. A good few of you said you wanted to do the foundation. We will send you a code, or you can talk to a training expert where you will get 20% off in December if you book in December. So that's available for you there. For those looking at doing the DPO, again, you'll get 20% off. We have some dates there coming up. And if you want to speak to someone about what might be best for you, just give us a call, or drop an email, or hit this link and it'll give you a form to talk to someone. I'm just going to click back, and we have a couple of minutes for questions. And and then I'm assuming people may or may not drop off. So, Andy, how can a data protection officer initiate necessary actions throughout an organization when they lack insight into other functional areas? That's quite a question.
It is. And in the background, Rita should have had an answer to this question. But basically, it's got to, first of all, got to start with senior management. We've got to get the senior management, the board on board with this. And what I've sort of suggested for Rita would be maybe asking IT governance to come in and do a GDPR audit radar tool so that we can get our fingers into all of those different areas. And come up with a clear, concise, this is the areas that need attention. These are the bits that what we would suggest for those fixes. It gives, it's something that's going to get into all departments to understand what it is that they're doing. And that would be my recommendation. That will then feed the conversations to come.
Yeah. Well, listen, Andrew, thank you ever so much for giving us your time. We are now out of time by 1 minute, and I will have people, if they could talk to me in my ear, they'd be saying, right, you need to wrap up, Andy. So we don't have any other questions in there, but if you do have questions, obviously contact us. Like I said, Andy can be available to you as well if needs be. Otherwise, thank you for attending and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.